Well, aren't you lucky? I've eliminated the smell of poverty for you, so you should be grateful." With those words, champagne splashed my face with force. This occurred when I went to greet my fiancé's family. Far from being concerned about me, Ryan, my fiancé, started laughing loudly, as if to mock me. I quickly realized that my carefully styled hair and the clothes I was wearing had all been for nothing. In the end, all I felt was emptiness. "I will therefore terminate our contract with your company." "What?" Upon hearing my statement, Megan, Ryan's mother, who had splashed the champagne on me, and Ryan himself, both expressed their shock with astonishment. Before these two, who couldn't even comprehend what was happening, Ryan's father, Mr. Adams, suddenly appeared. "Mr. Adams, you had mentioned before that you planned to retire soon and hand over your duties to your son. In such circumstances, it's reasonable to reconsider how much my company can trust a future business leader. There might have been an intention to maintain our relationship through your son marrying me, but unfortunately, it has backfired." After finishing all my explanations, I quietly left the scene. Megan, who had overheard my conversation with Mr. Adams, was too upset to say anything. Of course, this is not the end. They need to fully face the consequences of their actions. My name is Sarah Bryant. I am 48 years old and have never been married, remaining single all my life. I've always prioritized work and cherished my alone time. Thanks to my hobbies of reading and watching movies, I've spent fulfilling days, which is why I have never developed an interest in marriage as I aged. That spring in April, when the flowers were in full bloom, an unexpected marriage proposal came my way. The introducer was Matthew Adams, with whom I had a business relationship. "Miss Bryant, I would very much like to introduce you to someone." "What do you think?" he said. Initially hesitant, I decided to meet the person after being strongly urged. That person, Ryan, was the same age as me and the son of Mr. Adams. He is the youngest son, with several older sisters. He had come close to marriage several times before, but remained unmarried. "I have one request if you don't mind," I said. Our first meeting was conditional, but Ryan was a polite and kind person, and I immediately took a liking to him. I started thinking that maybe it would be all right to marry him, so I suggested that we start dating. Both Mr. Adams and Ryan were pleased with this proposal, and things started off smoothly. However, I could never have imagined that this choice would lead to an unexpected situation later on. 5 weeks into our relationship, on our third date, Ryan said with a smile, "We're already like a couple, aren't we?" Unlike before, Ryan wore a casual jacket and appeared relaxed and youthful. I had switched from my previous dressed-up style to a casual pants look. Although we are both older, our feelings at that moment were as fresh as those of young people. However, as the date began, I felt something off about Ryan's behavior. He often made comments that seemed condescending. For example, he took me to a slightly upscale restaurant and said proudly, "You wouldn't normally get to come to a place like this, right? It must be unusual for you." I could only respond with an ambiguous smile to his words. In fact, this restaurant is one of my favorites, and I had just visited it with a friend 3 days ago. But it would have been cruel to embarrass him on the spot, so I didn't tell him the truth. A waiter I knew nodded at my signal and pretended to be ignorant. While sitting, I noticed the watch on Ryan's wrist. It wasn't a top-of-the-line item, but it was decent. "That's a different watch from before. The color is lovely and it suits you," I complimented. Embarrassed, Ryan took off the watch to show it to me, mistaking my interest. He seemed to offer it out of kindness. Since I wasn't deeply interested, I briefly checked it and returned it, but he insisted again, "Feel free to take a closer look. It's not often you see something this high-end, right? No need to be shy." My reaction was not so much out of politeness as it was just a lack of interest in men's watches. Though I agreed to take a closer look when he insisted, I felt a bit perplexed. To me, a watch is just an accessory, and I think checking the time on a smartphone is sufficient. Many of the older people I work with wear them too, so I actually see them quite often. Thank you for showing it to me. It's nice to have something you like, I said. Ryan slightly pouted and surreptitiously followed my belongings with his gaze. What caught his interest was a bag that I am particularly fond of. This bag was specially made for me at a favorite workshop, reflecting the craftsman's skill and my taste. It's very practical. It was a bit pricey, but it seemed cheap to Ryan. I was wondering, don't you have a proper bag instead? I think you should have something more prestigious. The bag was custom-made at an Italian bag store and naturally doesn't have a brand logo. In fact, the Craftsman's Workshop logo is branded on the bottom of the bag. However, I prefer simple designs above all, so I asked to hide it. It would be difficult for someone not accustomed to women's bags to judge its price just by looking, but I couldn't help but be puzzled by his consistently superior tone. Sometimes I dismissed it, accepting that he's a sheltered son who doesn't know the world, but the feeling of discomfort didn't easily go away. At one point, I thought about reconsidering marriage, but since we'd only met 3 times, it seemed too hasty to decide on a separation. So I decided to wait and see how things would unfold. Since then, we have continued dating. Ryan does show some immaturity at times, but he is essentially an honest person. He no longer exhibits the unnatural behavior he showed before. No one is perfect from the start. If you have patience and gradually find harmony, love will eventually grow, said an older female celebrity on a show I watched for distraction. I found some truth in those words. The following week, we went to a famous hotel buffet for our 5th date. Strangely, Ryan piled 3 or 4 servings of food onto his plate. Are you sure it's okay to take so much? It would be a waste if you can't finish it, I lightly commented, to which he suddenly burst into laughter. Wondering what was so funny, he said, "A waste, Sarah? Are you still talking like someone poor? It's okay to take this much. It doesn't matter if I throw it away if I can't eat it all." I made a sour face. It seemed he completely failed to understand that wasting food not only incurs costs, but also discomforts other customers. The issue isn't just about money. It's about resources and the environment. Aren't you aware of the concept of food waste? It's also inconsiderate to other customers. And eating disorderly isn't good, I said, my voice carrying more sternness than usual. In response, Ryan suddenly shrank back as he poked at his pasta with a fork and muttered, "I'm sorry. Please don't be angry. My mom said you might be marrying me for money, and I just reacted without thinking." The word mom lingered in my ears, and I inadvertently repeated it. Referring to one's mother as mom at nearly 50 years old is uncommon and suggested a peculiarity about his family environment. As the date neared its end with this discomfort in mind, Ryan drove me home. As I was getting out of the car, he grabbed my hand to stop me. "Ms. Bryant, even though I am who I am, would you marry me? Even if not right away, being engaged is fine. Your fiancé can wait as long as it takes." I was taken aback by Ryan's sudden forwardness, but soon I began to feel genuine joy from his actions. Though there are many concerning aspects about Ryan, his courtship brought pure joy. I considered that the areas he lacks could be improved upon after marriage, nurturing him into a loving husband. 3 months had passed since we met, and I felt it was the right time to move forward. Let's grow together by complementing each other. We both have flaws and differences, so let's talk a lot and resolve them, I said with teary eyes, moved by emotion. However, the moment I agreed to the proposal, Ryan once again exhibited problematic behavior. "Let's start preparing for married life. First, you should quit your job, take care of the home, and learn housework from my mom," he began with a smile. My joy vanished, replaced by rising anger. I countered him more strongly than usual. "Don't be so presumptuous. If that's your attitude, then marriage is out of the question." "Goodbye," I said. Ryan was silent, stunned. During that moment, I got out of the car and immediately went back into my house. Though I had decided to distance myself, I reluctantly agreed to meet after receiving a message from Ryan over the weekend, insisting on seeing me. The weekend came quickly, and Ryan was already waiting at our meeting place when the appointed day arrived. As I approached, Ryan stood up quickly and apologized deeply. "I'm really sorry about last time. My friends told me to lay down the law, and I took it seriously. They even scolded me for actually thinking it's okay to do that," Ryan said, his energy low, which soon began to dissolve my anger. Just a while ago, I felt like clicking my tongue at him, but ultimately I came to terms with it. It's somewhat disappointing, but he is dear to me. Ryan is very straightforward, and sometimes it might be hard for him to distinguish between jokes and seriousness. He is easily influenced and somewhat indecisive, but I reminded myself that no one is perfect from the start. Make sure you keep this in mind. "We're getting engaged, after all," I said with a wry smile. At those words, Ryan looked up suddenly and brightened immediately. After a stormy engagement period, a month had passed, and finally, it was time to formally meet each other's families to announce our marriage. The first visit was to Ryan's family home. Although I had a long association with Mr. Adams, it was strictly professional, and this was my first time visiting his home, which was nerve-wracking. Ryan was as gentle and lovely as usual, but he seemed a bit off since the morning of the visit. I thought he might be nervous, but apparently that wasn't the case. About my mom," he started, and I braced myself, thinking of the potential issues between a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. However, I believed in his mother, known to be a hard-working woman and the kind-hearted wife of Mr. Adams. I hoped that if I spoke sincerely, she would understand, but I was mistaken. Yikes. The moment I stepped into the room where we were supposed to greet each other, liquid splashed onto my face. My eyes hurt intensely, and further, a strong irritation hit my nose, causing me to cough violently. I immediately panicked. "How about that, you poor thing? I got rid of the poor smell for you, so be thankful," I heard a mocking voice say. I was surprised by the bitter taste, smell, and heat. I realized the liquid that entered my mouth was champagne, but I was confused about why I received such treatment. "Megan, what are you doing?" Mr. Adams exclaimed in shock. The situation became clear. Ryan's mother and my future mother-in-law, Megan, had thrown champagne in my face. It seemed the earlier mocking voice was also Megan's. I remembered how Ryan had previously looked down on me as poor. I realized that this attitude might have come from Megan. "Haha, what's the matter, Sarah? You're all wet. Funny, isn't it? Go, Mom." Ryan laughed loudly. At that moment, I realized that everything up to this point had been in vain. Only emptiness piled up in my heart. "I will therefore terminate our contract with your company." "What?" At my statement, Ryan and Megan both exclaimed in surprise. They hurriedly looked at each other and seemed to be discussing something in whispers. Whether it was about our business dealings or something else, I was not involved. As an outsider, I merely speculated about their conversation. At that moment, there was one person who remained quiet, Mr. Adams, who, without a word, looked pale and wide-eyed. I turned to him again, thanked him, and began to speak. "First of all, Mr. Adams, I would like to thank you for your cooperation so far. It must be due to the condition we agreed upon that such an incident did not occur before." Then, when I turned to speak to Megan and Ryan, Megan looked at Mr. Adams with a doubtful expression and then stared at me sternly. Meanwhile, Ryan watched Megan's reaction while looking at me. I continued quietly, "This may be an unexpected statement for them, but I hope they listen carefully. One condition of accepting the matchmaking was that I would not reveal I am the president of a company until the marriage was decided. I thought my title might get in the way. My connection with Mr. Adams was born out of significant business transactions that I had built over the years while focusing on my business. I picked up my business card. Naturally, it listed my company name and position. Those not involved in management might not know the details of our transactions, but they would at least understand the title. Hello again, Mrs. Megan. Thank you for all your help so far. This is my position. I have been working with your husband's company for over 10 years. Currently, my company is probably your biggest client. I wonder what percentage of your company's sales we represent. When I handed over my business card, Ryan turned pale with surprise. He worked in his father's company, and seeing my company name should have made it clear who I was to Mr. Adams. I am not just any business owner. I am the owner of one of his most important business partners. Therefore, I wanted my profession hidden initially to truly assess Ryan's character when choosing a lifelong partner. I wanted to see the real person, not just superficial behavior. I cannot afford a contrived attitude because it could affect the fate of a parent's company. Thus, I was introduced merely as someone I met through work. I wore fake glasses and significantly altered my makeup and hairstyle for our dates. While the disguise served as a temporary amusement, in retrospect, it was a waste of time. I'm sorry, Mr. Adams, but I must decline this proposal. This concerns marriage, and also we need to pause our transactions to reassess the situation. I stated, then sat down to face Mr. Adams. Afterward, I explained the situation as calmly as possible. Mr. Adams turned pale upon hearing my words and stuttered. The transactions are affected? That can't be right. But his reaction seemed forced. I shook my head firmly, indicating that my decision was final. However, wanting him to understand that my decision was not based on a fleeting emotion, I continued in a calm voice. Mr. Adams, you mentioned before about planning to retire soon and handing over your responsibilities to your son. In such circumstances, it makes sense to reconsider how trustworthy a future business partner can be. There might have been an intention to maintain our relationship through your son marrying me, but unfortunately, it has backfired. Right after graduating from university, I started my own company with some friends. Over 20 years have passed since then, and I have been leading the business as its president throughout that time. As I've mentioned several times, I have built a relationship with Mr. Adams' company over more than a decade. My company, managed from a female perspective, has been recognized for its unique approach and has been growing significantly. Recently, as a result, our transactions with Mr. Adams' company have also increased. However, recently, there has been internal discussion about whether to switch to new business partners. Amidst this situation, the sudden proposal of an arranged marriage came up. Considering the timing, Mr. Adams might have sensed some movement from our company. This was not particularly kept secret. After finding out who I am, Megan and Ryan were clearly disturbed. I decided to explain the situation further to them. In fact, we were reviewing whether to continue our transactions with your company. I heard that your company is currently facing some management difficulties. Are you aware of that? As contracts with other partners are ending, this information is crucial. What does that mean? Megan asked, shocked, while frantically shaking Mr. Adams' arm beside her. Mr. Adams wiped his sweat in a flustered manner, looking anxious. It seems that the company's issues have not been discussed within the family. Ryan's glances between me and Mr. Adams caught my attention. Despite being an insider, Ryan appeared not to understand the current state of his own company. While considering this puzzling situation, I continued the conversation. In light of this, Mr. Adams strongly suggested I meet with you, Ryan, leading us to this point. Perhaps you considered this marriage proposal with the stability of your company in mind. It seems you wish to maintain our business relationship at all costs. Megan was visibly shaken, her hands trembling, and her lips quivering as I explained. Mr. Adams' company is indeed struggling with management issues. Megan may have looked down on me earlier, but her company is facing far more significant problems. Once praised for quality and speed, Mr. Adams' products have been technologically overtaken by competitors, no longer offering anything special. Moreover, the development and manufacturing processes are inefficient. Cost reduction has not progressed, and the product prices have become expensive. Additionally, the company imposes unacceptable levels of pressure on employees under modern labor standards, shortening delivery times and further deteriorating the corporate reputation. Adopting products from a low-rated company can cause a domino effect, dragging down the reputation of business partners. Even a company with a long history faces challenges with outdated structures and a high turnover rate among young employees. As a result, Mr. Adams' company's market share has gradually decreased, and its performance continues to decline. Under such circumstances, it was natural for us to explore transactions with other stable companies. How dare you threaten to cut off business based on personal feelings? What a despicable act! Are you blackmailing us? This is the worst. Don't think such behavior is acceptable. Megan exclaimed in outrage, despite her actions being the cause. I was surprised by her accusatory behavior. The lack of an initial apology spoke volumes about her character. Before I could point this out, Mr. Adams shouted vehemently, "Silence! This is all your fault." I swallowed what I was about to say. Indeed, it is likely that Mr. Adams, not I, is the most damaged party here. The unexpected fallout from his wife's inappropriate behavior would have been unforeseen for him, who had hoped for stability. All of this stems from Mr. Adams' actions to faithfully adhere to our agreement. But in reality, keeping it a secret from Ryan alone would have been sufficient. He should have informed his wife beforehand. As a result, I am relieved that I didn't have to welcome such a problematic person as my mother-in-law. The sight of Ryan was pitiful. He was pale and trembling, tightly gripping Megan's hand. It is sad to see a 48-year-old man still needing his mother's hand. Seeing his state, I couldn't help but give him a cold look. It's impossible that you, carrying such a cheap-looking bag, could be a president. Moreover, you complained about food waste and acted like you were poor. You are lying, even about being my father's business partner. How disgraceful! Ryan vehemently accused me. He might be trying to blame me, but he is mistaken. I am not interested in branded goods and prefer to use high-quality domestic leather products. Also, my criticism of wasting a large amount of ordered food was not because I am poor, but simply because it is inappropriate behavior. There can be no calculated acting in this regard. As for this bag, it is custom-made from a workshop I frequent. Anyone knowledgeable would recognize its quality immediately, but it seems none of you are interested in the quality of leather. This bag is priced higher than commercial brands, I explained. Suddenly, Megan stared at my shoes and bag with astonishment, then quickly averted her gaze, embarrassed. Clearly, it's a matter of those who know understand. I continued further. Moreover, ordering a large amount of food and not being able to finish it is not only wasteful but also disrespectful to the restaurant. It is unreasonable and inappropriate behavior. Furthermore, the fact that I am your father's business partner is true. What would it mean if the presidents of companies doing business with each other did not know one another? Ryan seemed dissatisfied and unconvinced by this discussion. Mr. Adams frowned at his son's behavior. When we confirmed that we knew each other, Ryan looked down without a word. His clinging to Megan appeared extremely childish and out of place for his age. Faced with his immaturity, I couldn't help feeling how disappointed I was. If your company abandons us, we will be on the brink of bankruptcy. Please forgive us. Mr. Adams began to apologize profusely. This clear statement from him seemed to finally make Megan realize the situation. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Ryan turned pale and began to tremble. "Mom," he said with tears in his eyes, clinging to Megan in his distress. However, Megan was unable to respond in any way. Witnessing this scene, I breathed a deep sigh of relief from the bottom of my heart. I deeply regretted ever considering sharing my life with such a person. thinking that because he was honest, I could correct him and make things better. Now, it seems like a naive thought in retrospect. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Mr. Adams repeated his apologies over and over, without actually proposing how to address the situation or how to make them reflect on their actions. This could easily lead to severing ties on an emotional basis. Therefore, I was forced to make specific remarks about the engagement. Let's address our engagement. I cannot consider marrying someone whose mother behaves so rudely. Moreover, he did not try to stop his mother and even laughed along with her. I hope you understand why the engagement should be called off, I said. Mr. Adams listened, repeating words of affirmation. I continued the conversation. Thank you for understanding. Until yesterday, I believed in Ryan's potential for improvement and proceeded with the engagement. But now I feel relieved that our relationship has been dissolved. Furthermore, I provided specific examples of Ryan's behavior. For instance, his frequent quoting of his mother's opinions, saying, "Mom said so," and then his behavior of calling his mother Mom at nearly 50 years of age. He often used his mother's opinions as a shield to justify his improper behavior. However, his weakness became apparent as soon as I pointed out these issues. He quickly became disheartened. There were countless examples of these behaviors. Mr. Adams was astonished, his mouth agape. Megan also showed embarrassment. However, Ryan himself seemed not to understand what part of his behavior was problematic. Regarding calling off the engagement, is there any fault on my part? I asked. Mr. Adams shook his head almost imperceptibly. His action seemed pitiful. I paused to calm myself and took a deep breath. I will divorce my wife. Ryan will also have to move out with her. The company's operations will be taken over by competent staff, so please do not abandon us. Help us. Mr. Adams began to declare his intention to divorce Megan, making it clear that he understood the gravity of the situation. What? That's not possible. I can't manage my life without this marriage. Megan cried out in shock. After that, Ryan and Megan both raised their voices at Mr. Adams. Why didn't you tell us beforehand? I am innocent. Why am I being kicked out? The problem is only with Mom. I am not involved. Their simultaneous protests stirred up the room. Becoming fed up with everything, I finally let out a real sigh. Well, as you wish. Thank you for your time. I will take my leave now, I said to Mr. Adams alone and quickly left. I needed to go home and take my high-quality clothes to the dry cleaners right away. Otherwise, the champagne stains would set and render them unwearable. Ryan stopped his protest and wept, seemingly accepting the situation. Megan tried to retort but was silenced by a stern reprimand from Mr. Adams. However, she still appeared to grit her teeth in dissatisfaction, looking far more determined than her son. 5 months after the unpleasant incident with the 3 members of the Adams family, as predicted, Mr. Adams resigned from his position. It was not just a retirement but a resignation, taking responsibility for the deteriorating performance of the company. The main reason for the decline in performance was the termination of the contract with my company. A former subordinate who took over as the new president conducted a comprehensive review of the operations. Breaking away from family management was well received and external evaluations improved. He was proactive in developing new products, and the results were beginning to show. At this rate, resuming the interrupted transactions might be imminent. Furthermore, Mr. Adams and Megan officially divorced. Ryan moved out with Megan, as anticipated, and started a new life together. But rumors persist of daily conflicts between them. The once close relationship between mother and son might have been based primarily on financial comfort. After being expelled from his father's company, Ryan quickly fell into unemployment. Unable to bear Ryan's financial dependence, Megan left him in Mr. Adams' care and disappeared herself. I heard she now lives alone in an old, low-rent apartment, mourning her fate. Megan once boasted of her lavish lifestyle, but it seems her behavior actually pushed many people away. Now she has neither helpers nor friends and has become a lonely figure. About a year after Mr. Adams' retirement, I had a chance encounter with the former president when I visited his former company. I unexpectedly ran into him. "I am very sorry for the great inconvenience I caused before," former Mr. Adams said. He had generously transferred half of his property to Megan. However, the main reasons for her financial troubles were Ryan's demands and Megan's continued extravagant spending. Unfortunately, this is nothing but personal responsibility, and sympathy is hard to come by. Former Mr. Adams initially planned to keep Ryan at a distance. However, he was shocked to learn that his nearly 50-year-old son did not even know how to boil water, and eventually they ended up living together. He seems to be firmly educating Ryan, including making various decisions within the household. Since Ryan had completely depended on Megan, he had never learned basic life skills. "I feel that I have not properly looked after my son and wife until now. This is the misfortune I created for myself. Although it's late, I am deeply reflecting. I think I also did some wrong things to Megan. Fortunately, the company did not go bankrupt, and I am relieved," said the retired Mr. Adams, now staying at home. He is seriously engaging with Ryan for the first time. Ryan, facing unprecedented challenges with household chores and part-time jobs despite his age, seems to frequently cry. I can only hope that he becomes a decent person. However, I myself do not wish to have any more dealings with him ever again. 3 years have passed since then, and my company is doing very well. My performance has improved compared to before, and the stock price has also risen. Regarding my personal situation, I am no longer considering marriage. I had already informed my parents when I got engaged, and I explained everything thoroughly when the engagement was dissolved. When I shared the details, they supported my decision to stay single rather than approving my involvement with such a person. As a result, my parents have become even stronger supporters of my dedication to my work. I work actively every day and have taken up new hobbies to lead a more fulfilling life. Although I previously preferred indoor activities, I decided to take up exercising at the gym recently. I can visibly see muscles starting to form. My subordinates look at me with admiration, which is quite a ticklish feeling. I'd always believed that happiness is something you grab for yourself. I seek happiness that I create on my own, not just the happiness that comes from being with someone else. If I were to fall in love again in life, I would prefer it to be towards the end of my life, at life's end. I feel that one can afford to throw everything away for love. However, that's not a concern for now. Currently, my days are fulfilling, and I am happy.